Somebody
See?
probably.
All right.
Maybe me.
He said he did it before.
Well, if we want to talk about writing notes and stuff, 'cause I know you guys love writing notes. You're like, I didn't know what to write.
Yeah.
We can slow down just a little bit. Talk about the main metering system. First thing we talked about is Venturi. Then I said, I'm not going to do that. We're going to do this drawing. We can come back to our drawing. What does the Venturi do?
Restricts airflow. Creates a low pressure zone.
Well, it does restrict airflow. Do we want the airflow restricted?
To create a low pressure.
No.
You do not want the airflow restricted. Right? The more air we get into the cylinders, the more horsepower we're going to get. So it wouldn't make much sense to put a restriction on and then put a turbocharger on to overcome the restriction, right? So restriction's a bad thing in the intake system. So the Venturi's there because it has to be. Like I said, there's one TCM figured out a way to do it without it in their fuel injection, which is really cool. So let me see. Venturi. Well, it does. It creates a low pressure. Creates a low pressure. Needed. We need it. That's why it's there, because you have to draw fuel from what? Discharge nozzle. Bowl would not be incorrect, because that's where it ultimately came from. Operates on what?
Bernoulli's principle.
Did you record?
Yeah, thanks. See, now you make me second guess myself. See, it says recording right there. So, okay. Operates on Bernoulli's principle. I don't think I have to write another thing after you coming out of Phil's class.
No, not turbines.
You could probably teach me a thing or two about Bernoulli's principle at this point. But just to be sure, the more air that flows through the Venturi, the greater the velocity, which means the greater the
Pressure.
Lower the pressure.
suction is what I was going for. Lower the pressure, the greater the suction. Trying to speak colloquially. That makes more sense. So the more air that moves through, the more suction you're going to get. The more suction you get, the more fuel you're going to get. So what's the brains of the operation for this whole carburetor? The Venturi is the brains of the thing. All right. I have air metering force. I think I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to be careful with that. So the Venturi will restrict the amount of air, restrict the amount of air entering the engine. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad.
It's not a good thing. We don't really rather not have that, but there it is. We talked about if the Venturi size being important. If it's too small, then
Too much restriction.
too small.
Too much.
Too small. Let me see what too small. Will restrict airflow. Or restrict too much air. We'll have a loss of power. What if it's too large then? I know, we'll just make a Venturi this big around and it won't restrict anything.
You won't have a Venturi.
You won't have a Venturi, won't notice it. So let's see, too large, it's inefficient at creating suction. All right, talking about parts, we have the main discharge nozzle. What happens there? All right, yeah. Okay, that's where fuel is drawn out. Drawn out, so the carburetor drawn out into the air entering the engine. All right, I'm not going too fast, am I? 3, we have the float chamber, or the tank, for those of you in the back.
The one in
No, a lot of you said that,
Oh.
which is fine. I just get to make fun of you. I don't care. Float chamber works on what technology?
floating.
Works on the toilet bowl technology theory. Just use toilet bowl parts in the back, and that's how it works. So float chamber, what we got? Acts as a reservoir. Reservoir for fuel to be used. It controls the level of fuel. Level of fuel at the discharge nozzle. Well, obviously, without the float, you just had a reservoir. It would just reach the top of the discharge nozzle and just run out on the ground.
Yep.
And it'd be really too rich. It'd be way too rich. So the float level is critical to proper operation. So I made that up. Float level. It's critical to proper operation. So you're setting up the float level. You can do it in the Stromberg or the Marvel Schebler. And if you set the float level too high, what's going to happen?
You get less fuel.
Well, yeah, I like too high, then it's going to drip out constantly. Right? That's going to be annoying. So, I have to placard the airplane. Make sure you turn the fuel off whenever you're not using it. So you don't want that. So what about the person who's like, aha, smart guy. I'm going to make the float level real low. That way it never drips out. Now what do you have? Too lean. Takes way too much air to draw the fuel out. So how would we know that we're running too rich?
Fuel drip out.
Yeah, well,
Black smoke.
Black smoke.
yeah. Could be black smoke, not gray, because gray is what?
Oil.
Oil.
We know that by heart.
Thank you for the demonstration on that. I appreciate it.
Fuel usage is through the roof.
Fuel, oh man, fuel usage is really high. Too lean. High cylinder head temp. Yeah, the problem with EGT and CHT is you have to know a baseline before it makes any sense. So before I put in my system, I wouldn't have been able to tell you what my EGT was. Now I just know because that's what it is.
Yeah.
But if somebody had set up my carburetor with the float level that's way too high, well, I would know who that was. It'd be me. I wouldn't know, right? If I carburetor was done, then I put in the EGT system, I'd be like, well, it's just, runs at 1410. I wouldn't know because I didn't have baseline. So you had baseline to know that. And you can't really compare somebody else's plane because their probes could be a couple millimeters different one way or the other. I like how I'm using the metric system now. These are saying 64s. All right. Now let me see. Float chamber. Float chamber. We talked about what is head pressure? It has nothing to do with allergies. What's head pressure?
It is the pressure that's formed by the height of a column of liquid.
There you go. It's just a weird way of saying the pressure kind of at the point where the fuel enters the carburetor. So it's typically in reference to a column of something or a water tower or something that's hung up high and the fluid comes down. You have pressure at the end because of the height of the fluid. Call that head pressure. So you're going to see that with gravity feed systems. So head pressure, gravity feed. What does gravity feed mean?
Gravity.
Has no fuel pump.
Tanks are up above.
Tanks are above. So head pressure is how much?
2 to 4, 3 to 5.
3 to 5 psi. What if we have fuel pump pressure?
5 to 20.
Fuel pump, all right. 5 to 20. Fuel metering force. I do not like this term. Because as applicable to carburetors, it deals with air. So it should be called air metering force. Because we're going to talk later about pressure carbs and fuel injection, where we talk about fuel metering force, and guess what? Fuel metering force is there. It's fuel pressure. So fuel metering force of a carburetor is what?
Difference in pressure.
Difference in pressure. Pressure. Oh, in air pressure. In air pressure. It's very important. From float bowl to the venturi. So fuel metering force is air. So fuel metering force in this case is air. I saw one thing that says, another way of saying it, the force required to lift the fuel, from its normal level what would normal level be?
Wherever the float is.
Where the float is, yeah, opposition. From its normal level to the discharge point. To discharge point. How could we change the air metering force?
High pressure. High pressure in the float bowl?
Pressure is the float bowl.
Well, there's an easier way to do it. How does the pilot do it when the pilot's flying around?
More air.
Huh?
More air.
How do you get more air?
Mixture control.
No? Open the throttle. If you open the throttle, what happens?
More air.
More air goes through the
The junction.
venturi, which decreases the pressure of the venturi. Float bowl stays the same. Therefore, you have a higher difference. Therefore, fuel metering force went up. Okay. How can we change the force on the float bowl?
Mixture control.
If you have a Stromberg, you can do it with the mixture control. If you have a Marvel Schebler, you ain't gonna. So, in the Stromberg, it's done with the mixture control, manual mixture control. All right, what else we got here? Main air bleed. Main air bleed. What's main air bleed do?
Emulsifies the fuel.
Okay, does that. We'll say helps break surface tension. I like that, surface tension of liquid fuel. Which means that it's now going to help lift the fuel to the discharge point. which ultimately helps provide a more uniform mixture. A more uniform mixture of fuel and air. It does, in fact, create more surface area. Why would it do that?
Air bubbles.
Yeah, explain.
It aerates the fuel.
S-U-R-F-A-C-E, sir. More surface area of fuel. How does it do that?
More, you got bubbles in it, so more surface area.
Yes, exactly.
Like
Well,
spray.
just 'cause you make like small aerates.
Well, what would have more surface area, like a basketball or an equivalent of baseballs?
Baseballs.
Baseballs. Okay, so it's just taking one big glob, making a whole bunch of little ones, and a bunch of little ones has more surface area than one big glob. So it breaks it up to do that. More surface area, and that leads to fuel for faster evaporation. All right, I got one of those oral questions in there. It's what happens if the bleed gets plugged? And then it's just sucking all. It's kind of a weird thing because if the main air bleed were to become blocked, then all of these things wouldn't be true. It would not help break surface tension of the liquid fuel. So it would have a harder time getting out the discharge nozzle. It wouldn't help lift the fuel, so it would have a harder time getting out the discharge nozzle. Those two things sound like
No fuel.
lean. Provides a more uniform mixture, so rich, not rich. So I picture it is coming out like this. Right? It's a big globule come out and then nothing for a second, then more, then nothing, then more. Creates more surface area for fuel, faster evaporation. Doesn't evaporate, therefore it's not usable. That sounds like rich. I know, I was going to say lean. Yeah, lean. Unusable fuel. Lean.
That's unusual.
I was going to say lean, then they said rich. I said, yeah, rich. And you said, so that sounds like lean, and this sounds like lean. But the answer tends to be
Rich.
rich.
So what do you want?
Well, no, unusable fuel would be rich.
Yeah.
Fuel to air ratio.
Wait, unusable. No, it's like it's not there.
It's excess.
Right, but when it's running rich, there's excess fuel in the cylinders that's not being used. So
I guess it's used
rich.
full torque cooling, but
I know.
Well, if it's going to
Yeah.
pull the same amount of fuel, or same amount of whatever, fuel mixture, air mixture, if it's the
Yeah.
same amount,
Yeah,
it's all fuel, no air.
Yeah.
It's going to be more fuel, which is rich,
yeah.
Rich, yeah.
right?
I can go both ways on that.
Yeah.
Wherever persuade can.
A lot of times I will take
Rich.
both answers if you can
The
at
rich.
least explain it to me.
rich.
Lean in.
Which brings me to a good point. You guys really you need to get used to verbalizing stuff. The fastest way to end an oral is to be silent. When you go silent, okay, little tip. When you come up to the oral table, I'm like, my thought process the whole time is, oh God, please pass, please pass, please pass. I hope you pass, please pass. Please have all the right answers. I really do. I know you maybe think I don't, but I do. I'm like, come on, you got to get it. You got to get it. And I work with you. Maybe you don't notice it, but when you go silent, it's time to go away. Say something. If you have a thought in your head, start talking it out. If you have no thought in your head, then be silent, because that's what I think. You're locked up. You got nothing going on in there.
Gets us in trouble with you sometimes.
Huh?
though. If we just start talking.
Okay, but you can say this. Let me think out loud for a minute here.
Okay.
Let me think out loud for a minute here. It's like when you're playing chess
Okay,
and you
that's
got your
the
finger
key.
up. I didn't take my finger off the piece yet.
I got you.
Right? You can move it back.
I'm gonna put my hand on the part.
Yeah, hey man, I'm thinking out loud here for a minute. Just give me a minute, and you can say about anything you want because you can take it back. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Thinking out loud.
You know, you go, okay, wait a minute. Okay, so if the main air bleed gets plugged, then well, probably is going to run really rich because then it would. No, wait a minute. Let me think. Okay, so this is what's going to happen, right? So it's not going to come out of the discharge nozzle very well. It's not. You get as a DME, anybody who could start articulating stuff and the thought process within it was good enough. You didn't always have to have, and I've always kept that. You don't always have to have the right answer, but if you can articulate that, man, I really understand what I believe does. I know where it is. I know its purpose, but what happens if it does this? Now that's kind of got me a little perplexed here. On one hand, I want to say this. On the other hand, I just want to say this. And you've shown an understanding of the system to meet the requirements. So, unless you say something really dumb. So I know the Kool-Aid's got to go. Like, where'd the Kool-Aid come from? Well, not Kool-Aid. I mean hydraulic fluid. What? Hydraulic fluid? Well, it's hydraulic, right? Then it's going to go through the diffuser into the, okay, yeah, wrong class. And, all right.
Somebody in here go
Did I do main metering check? Yeah, come on.
They're mixing both classes.
All right, so we got the main metering jet. A calibrated orifice, calibrated orifice that meters fuel accurately. Based on the pressure differential between fuel bowl and venturi. Based on pressure differential between fuel bowl and venturi. That sounds like a textbook kind of an answer. What's the main metering jet do? It is a calibrated orifice. It's going to restrict the flow of fuel. We're going to see a lot of calibrated orifices in this class. Right? And it creates within and I'm not talking about what I wrote here. I'm talking away from that. From one side of the orifice to the other, especially in pressure systems, it's going to cause a pressure drop. You'll have higher pressure on one side and lower pressure on the other as long as there's fluid flowing. Got to get this. If you don't get this concept, you'll be like stuck. As long as it's flowing, you have a higher pressure, goes through an orifice, drops the pressure. Okay. What happens if there's no flow? Then it equalizes.
Yeah.
Right? It'll flow through that little orifice until it equalizes. All right? So keep that in mind for future reference. So the main metering jet is going to restrict the maximum amount of fuel that can get from the bowl to the discharge nozzle. Without it, it would run way too rich.
Well, wouldn't that be the brains other than the material? Is that the manager?
It's the manager.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's the manager.
No, it's more like it's like
Kelly versus Kevin.
yeah. I wasn't going to go that way. I was going to say it's more like the relationship with me and my wife. You know, my wife is like the Venturi. She got the whole brains of stuff, but I kind of slow things down. Well, not me. It would just go smoothly right through, but ultimately that'd be too much. So no, because it doesn't measure. It just is dumb. It just sits there. Right.
Oh,
So,
okay.
okay.
Consistent. Very consistent.
What happens then if the main metering jet is too big?
Too much fuel.
Too much fuel. It's going to be too rich. Too small. Too lean. For my people who ride, especially dirt bikes, and you guys change out your main metering jet needle height all the time. You know, all the time? Do you? I do. Brandon does like all the time, man. So yeah, I used to do it on my dirt bike. Every time we go to higher altitude, change out the jet, change the needling, back and forth. Probably would have been better if I would just left it alone, but anyway.
Ain't broke, don't fix it.
So in aircraft, then, do we have that option? I mean, do we sometimes use a, you know, it's running a little bit lean, we ought to just change out the main metering jet? You're not given that option. You put the one that goes there for that engine. Everything is kind of done for us. You don't get to, so that's why I like aviation. I don't know, it's exact. And how do you measure the size of the main metering jet? Which end of the drill bit?
The sharp notch.
The not sharp end, yeah. 'Cause I have yet to see anybody. It's one thing. It'll be next semester, trust me. Somebody be like, "Well, every drill bit fits if you put it inside a drill and push hard enough."
You just recalibrate.
I know. Kevin, I got a 1-inch drill bit fit. I don't know. Spin it and you push hard. See, they drill them. Huh? Don't do that. All right, the float mechanism. Float mechanism. Well, this is sort of repeating ourselves. Controls the level of fuel in the bowl.
And therefore the discharge nozzle.
And therefore, the discharge nozzle. I could write that. That would be even shorter than I'm about to write. Level must be maintained. That's what I was going to write. Level must be maintained. If you mention my name, you'll get a good seat.
It took me a second.
That word is maintained. Slightly
For the toilet.
below the outlet
It's a dad joke, obviously.
of discharge nozzle. All right, so working on the Strombergs, you can do this because the float bowl and float are in the bottom half, and you can take the top off and set it down, and you can look at it, and you can put fuel in, which you're going to do, and you're going to take those 3 measurements, right? And remember, every time between each measurement, you dump the fuel out and fill it back up. That's how we actually had to do it in the field. If you wait long enough, what will happen? Almost always.
It'll rise.
It'll be all over the top. So if you wait long enough, you can get, if you measure it soon enough, it's all a matter of timing. Time when you measure it, it'll be perfect. Let's see. In my shop, this is way time ago, we'd actually test it like all day. We'd leave it setting there. We'd lap in the needle. We'd get it to actually work. And so you could leave it for like an hour and come back and measure it. It'd be just right there. Contains. What's it got in there?
Float.
The float. Boy, root beer float sounds good, doesn't it? Needle and seat. What we got? I have a needle in here. Well, you'll eventually see a needle. There's the seat right there. So my carburetor, I took out the brass floats. You guys watched the video on the floats yet?
Yeah.
It'll make you a believer out of you watching that video. A good sales video. Because these things are, I've seen them.
Don't put them on your car.
Don't drive on them. So, yeah. No, but I've seen them get holes, sink. Those new epoxy floats are just amazing. So I put the new epoxy floats in my airplane. When you do it, you have to change out, well, you have to adjust the needle and seat, which means you have to pull the seat out, which means you have to change some washers in there. And it's a bit of a pain because it does have a drag torque requirement when you're installing it, of 5 inch-pounds. So it means you should get 5 inch-pounds of torque. Your wrench should click at 5 inch-pounds when you're putting this in, indicating that the little strip of nylon in here is still good. It's like,
Don't breathe on
yeah, it is.
Changing the float out is a minor alteration, right?
It's not an alteration at all.
Not an alteration.
It's a repair.
Okay.
Yeah. So, minor repairs. So this one's going to hang this way. So bowl's down here. So you can't really set it up and mess with it. So this one is real easy. They just tell you to put the gasket on, take a drill bit, and they say near the edge of the floats. And if you look at those things, they're pretty rounded. So near is kind of a bit of an ambiguous kind of a. I'm more of an exact kind of guy. That's why I like these. They're very square. I don't like these in particular because it's full of fuel, but I like it when they're shaped like that. They're square. But it's kind of funny. It's like, well, a long time ago they used brass. Then somebody said, oh, we shouldn't use brass, we should use composite. And somebody said, no, not composite, plastic. And somebody said, not plastic, we should definitely use brass. And somebody said, no, we really should use. But we'll make them blue, so everybody think it's something different. Okay, float
Sounds like we couldn't
level.
figure out how to fix our problem.
Okay, float level. So if the float level is too high, we're gonna get. Oh, I said, where did I write? I just wrote it backwards. Rich. Too low, it's gonna be lean. And when I say, well, how are you gonna know if it's too rich or too lean? The one thing you're not gonna say is, well, it's gonna sound rich and it's gonna sound lean. Okay, next person who says, well, I'm gonna say, okay, you have to imitate an engine running lean. You have to make the little noise and everything. I want to hear what it sounds like because. Let's see here. Measuring fuel level. Stromberg. Since the two pieces are in the lower half, has to be blue because has to be blue. I said because 100 low lead's blue. One way or another, you're going to put the depth micrometer on this, and you're going to take the pin and you're going to roll it down, 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 down until what happens?
Just touch it.
Just barely touches.
How do you know when it touches?
Just
Fuel's going through the wall.
When you get to just, watch it real careful, boom, fuel is just going to jump up on there. Because it blue, damn you. Fuel's going to jump up on there. That's called the surface to meniscus, where it goes up the side. And you stop, you're going to read it. Then you're going to drain it. How are you going to drain it? There's a drain on the bottom. Or you could dump it out. Try again. Hey, I don't care. You can do it any way you want. Right? You can take 3 readings. We'll do the average of those 3 readings. How do we get the average? Add them together. Yeah, do that. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so we got all that. We just did that visual. So B. How do we adjust? Adjustment is made by adding or removing shims under the seat. Adding shims raises the seat. Cutting off fuel sooner. So level goes down. Removing shims lowers the seat. float has to raise higher to stop fuel. So that would be level goes up. And I believe I mentioned yesterday it's a ratio of 5 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
So if for every 1/64 inch shim moves level 5/64. On the Marvel Schebler, float is measured dry.
Do you mind going a little
I'm getting ahead of you.
bit?
Okay. Float is measured dry with a specific rod.
Shank.
With the shank. For what?
Oh, shoot. 3.
I don't remember. It's okay.
7 seconds.
7:30 seconds.
So number
That's what.
for a number 1 drill bit. Just-
And then you're allowed to bend the tab on it.
No more than 0.03.
Otherwise, you have to add or remove shims, which you have about 1 or 2 shots to do it before you've ruined the nylon in the seat and have to buy a new seat. So, guess well. So you do that, then you assemble it.
You're saying the measurement should be 730 seconds, or you measure it with 730 seconds?
That's the drill bit that you use.
Oh,
At the near the edge
Needs to
of
fit under
the
it.
float. So you put the gasket on. Put the float with the seat and the pin and all that in. And it's going to set about so. And you take a drill bit, you put it down there. And it should be right about 7:30 seconds.
and then you tighten up the valves.
And if it's not, you're allowed to move the tab a little bit. If that doesn't work, you pull the seat out and put in a washer shim under the seat. Like I said, you only get experience tells you only get 1 or 2 times of pulling that in and out before you have to replace it. Otherwise, it doesn't stay put. I wish they would just let you use Loctite, but they don't say that. Measured dry, and then we see adjustment is made. Made by bending tab or using shims under seat. Final check. Final check is made, assembled using a sight tube. So the directions for how much pressure, so you're going to use half a PSI for it's like 15 minutes. But since you're using the pump and it's right next to me, don't do it for 15 minutes. Just do it for 2 or 3. And then you have to do it at 6 PSI for another 15 minutes. Don't do it at 6 PSI. Or don't do it for 15 minutes. Just do it for a couple minutes in the lab. So you get the idea. So they give you a choice. You don't have to use 6 PSI. You can use a column of fuel 16 feet high, something like that.
You don't want us to do that?
I kind of do, but I don't have a... I mean, we can get a coffee can, hang it 16 feet up in the air, and then you would just
Yeah.
pour it in and just wait. So we have that. Yeah, we have that stair there. So if somebody wants to set that up, I'll let you do it.
How big is the tube?
Huh?
How big is the tube? Around 1 inch? Are you supposed to
I think it is. Yeah.
just get 1 inch?
Okay. What don't we use to check needle and seat? Shop air. I mean, you can. Just not gonna work. All right. Fuel strainer. I actually wrote my notes. Usually found on the inlet. No, it's always found on the inlet to the carb. I say, this is me. I don't really know what the book says because I can't seem to find anything. Check. By check, I mean take it out and clean it. Every 100 hours or annual, whichever comes first. I could also add the drain. Check every 100 hours or annual, whichever is first. Why do I want to drain the carburetor every year?
Water.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday, I think. Get any sort of bowl. Water enters. What's heavier, water or water? So the water is going to set down here, causing corrosion. So, same thing with fuel gaskelators. It's what we call the fuel filter in an aircraft. It's at the lowest point, so the fuel is going to come down. It's going to go all the way to the bottom of the firewall. It's got a cup. Goes through a screen, through the gascolator, out and in. I can't tell you how many gascolators I pull apart and look inside of it. They're usually aluminum, and it's just almost corroded through. Right? Well, I don't think that happened in 1 year. Maybe it did. I don't know. I don't think people check those. It's a pain in the butt. We do it anyway. It's really common for the guys in the shop to say, "Hey, Kevin, I can't get the drain plug out of the carburetor. I'll let you do it. Thank you very much." God, we had one that was so stuck the other day. So what do you can do if it gets stuck?
Heat it up.
Yeah, with
With an open
if you're gonna get a torch in there, just get it. We did. We heated it up, but what did we use? Heat gun. I said warm it up to about what it would be if it was a running engine. So we just warm it up, and then it'll eventually come out. Idle circuit. All right, now we're on something different. Oh no, not throttle plate. That was it. Throttle plate. The throttle plate. It is a butterfly type valve. I don't know why it's butterfly. I've seen butterflies. They don't look like that. Butter type valve in the closed position. Closed position. What is a closed position? Restrictive, obstructive, restricts the air and fuel entering engine. So it'll be idle or go slow. In the open position, that is max airflow. Just go fast. So this doesn't have the butterfly valve in it. Just bring a carburetor, but it's over here. On annual inspections, 100-hour inspections, some of the things that we always pull the screen. It's on this side of these carburetors. The hose goes here, and then there's like a steel adapter looking thing, and the screen's in there. You pull the hose, pull that adapter out, there's the screen. On the bigger carburetors, thankfully it's on the opposite side. There's just a plug, you pull it out, pull the screen, put it back in. Always check the screen, always check the float bowl. But the other thing you want to make sure is that you're going full throttle and idle out here. So it always takes two. So as part of my checks, I always get one of the guys, and we lube everything on the airplane at one shot. So somebody sits in the cockpit, and I just call out what I'm doing. We'll do ailerons, and I look at all the pulleys and bell cranks and lube everything and listen and watch how it goes and go all the way through the cables into the cabin, back and through there and back around out the other side. Then I got to do do the elevator, every one. Trim cables, always do those. Always find pulleys. Surprising how many pulleys are frozen out there. All right, then we get down to the engine, which is what we're talking about. And I always say, well, okay, we want to check carb heat. And so do the carb heat flapper valve, which is down here under the carburetor. And I want to make sure that the carb, when it goes all the way in, the guys in there know I should have cushion. What is cushion?
Oh, extra.
A little extra. So every single engine control, actually every control in the airplane, with some exception, engine control, we'll say engine. Every single engine control, the stops are not in the cockpit. The stops are on the thing. So when I say go to full throttle, that's pushing it all the way in. They should see at least an 1/8 inch before the knob hits something. So I want a good solid 1/8 inch. I would rather have a 1/4, but good solid 1/8 inch. And then I see it hit out here. Boom. Okay, positive contact here. And my guys know this. No cushion. A lot of times it'll hit here and in the cockpit at the exact same time. Is there cushion? No, it's not acceptable. I said a minimum of 1/8 inch. So we have to re-rig it. And then we do the same thing with the mixture. No mixture on this one. Mixture control back here.
Bluetooth.
Right? Huh?
It's Bluetooth.
Bluetooth, I know. So back and forth. So make sure the mixture, stop to stop, not in the cockpit. Carb heat, stop to stop. Prop control, stop to stop. Bought a new trailer and had to put trailer brakes in, and they gave me the option for Bluetooth trailer brake on your phone. I'm like, so let me get this straight. I'm coming down Highway 80, and the trailer starts fishtailing. At that point, I got to get my phone out, unlock it, find the app for the phone, and apply the brakes.
Email and password.
Yes, I know.
Just use it on the lock yourself out on accident.
Yeah.
At that point,
Too
just
many
pop the
tries.
tires.
I do
Your
not.
laptop to reopen.
Meanwhile, I'm,
update it.
Just that verification.
yes. I opted not to buy that thing.
What's the benefit of Bluetooth?
It was easy to install. It's just a coupler. Didn't have to wire the van, truck, or anything. You just you hook in a coupler and you're done.
So you don't have to have any wire.
Yeah.
Sensor that goes out.
Yeah.
It's just something else that can fail.
I said, no, thank you. All right. Why do we need an idle circuit?
Idle.
Well, why doesn't we just use the main circuit?
Too much power.
Was it useless?
Not enough suction to pull fuel out of the main metering nozzle.
Not enough suction. Butterfly is closed. In fact, when you look at the valve when it's closed on the carburetor in idle position, you kind of look at it and go, how does this thing work anyway? I mean, it's like closed. There's very, very little air getting through. Because something that's got pistons this big around. It's like, okay. Oh yeah, if you want to have some fun, when you're doing the ground power unit and it's running, go ahead and put your hand flat on the bottom of the carburetor. And try and pull it off.
Idle or?
Oh, you pick. But let me watch, okay? It'll help because I'm going to have to fill out an incident report. So I might as well just see how it happened. So, yeah.
Oh,
I've seen some people kind of get their hand close enough to go, whoa, okay, no, thanks. It's sucking a lot of air. What's that?
Don't put your finger on it.
You put your fingers in there. It's not going to do anything. It's when you put your hand over it and block that. You got to hold on hard enough because it's going to suck it on there until that engine dies. So, all right, well, when throttle is closed, when throttle is closed, which is what position? Idle, okay. Very little air. Very little air is flowing, and Venturi not effective. So we need an idle circuit. Well, we don't have a Venturi, so how do we get suction? Magic.
Bluetooth.
And throttle is closed. Displacement. The pistons creates a low pressure. Or vacuum. In the manifold, What's the manifold? Intake manifold. What's the intake manifold? Because we're going to have to get real square on some of these terms, because in a little bit when we start talking about turbochargers and all kinds of stuff, we're going to have to know the intake manifold, upper deck, and all these things. So intake manifold is from the carburetor plate basically to the intake valve. All that be the intake manifold. And we often take a pressure there called manifold pressure. I know where they got that name. In the intake manifold. And I can do this. Intake. Is from throttle plate to intake valve. This vacuum is used to draw out idle fuel. So if we go back up to our drawing, well, that was a long time ago, wasn't it? You have to put in some idle stuff here. So we'll take this, close it up. I'll have to put it up here, not to scale. And we could do this. We could say, oof, I need more room. Haha. That's our air bleed. All right, what we can do. What's that?
The drawings in the book put the air bleed on the other side.
Well, I don't want it there.
We are creative.
There we go. Okay. So now we can bring up some sort of tube. Good enough. Okay. Got this tube. What's going to happen to that tube?
It's going to go above
Fill with fuel.
It's going to fill up full of fuel to this level right here.
Yep.
Is there a reason why you can't? Okay, thank you. Keeps trying to. You can't use that. Okay. Then got some stuff drilled here. We'll go like that. There we go. So we got a tube going right there. Okay, and maybe the second one, and maybe even a third one.
And a fourth one?
I don't know. I just ran out of room. So maybe not a fourth one because I'm out of room. And of course, this one would have a needle in it with a screw on it, so we could adjust it. So during idle, what do we have up here?
Manifold pressure.
Vacuum.
Yes.
Manifold pressure, very low, vacuum. So that will draw the fuel, the blue fuel. Why can't this be something different? This should be
Purple.
yellow. And why is it that pen? I don't like that pen. Nope. We'll deal with that later. Modify tool. All right, whatever.
You could do rainbow.
Oh yeah, there's a rainbow one. I know. That'd be awesome.
Make the fuel.
I'm just wasting time here. Okay. Rainbow's vacuum. Okay, there we go. Yes, rainbow's definitely the vacuum. Okay, so we got a vacuum from the pistons. Pull them back. They want air so bad. By the way, for me, I like to think about the engine needs air to accelerate. So I always, for some reason, I think of the engine as, maybe it's wishful thinking, running more on air. If you let more air in, the engine's going to speed up. It will, as opposed to, okay, we're running some position and I want to increase the output of the engine. I could increase fuel or I could increase air. Which one would actually cause the engine to go faster? Air. Because if I held the air steady and added more fuel,
Nothing.
it'll just get richer and not go faster. If I held the fuel steady and opened the butterfly and allowed more air to go, the engine's going to speed up. It's going to get leaner as it does it, which is not good. That's where we compensate for that. But it's the air that makes the engine go faster and slows down. So air is sort of the primary indicator if the engine's going to speed up or slow down. That's the way I always think about it, rather than thinking about, well, if I add fuel, because really, you got to add air to get it to go faster. That will certainly do it. Okay, so we got this vacuum. You can tell by the rainbow. And that vacuum is going to draw fuel up through here and out through here. Meanwhile, and I don't know, some of you, in my videos, I must have said it. I can hear you picking up on it. I talk about this little area right here. I say, well, I guess there's maybe a little Venturi action going on right there because air does have to come through here and speed up. And perhaps that, I don't think I've ever read that anywhere, will now draw fuel out because of that little Venturi effect. That makes sense to me. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, but I will tell you this, Rainbow Capen, there's definitely a vacuum right here that's drawing it out. So yeah, either which way is, I think, acceptable. It's got a low pressure right through there. So that low pressure here and right there next to the valve, that's definitely going to, if it's in line or above, draw more fuel out through the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
But meanwhile, we got the tertiary, the third one here, and this is all just kind of ambient. Well, since this pressure up here is lower, this tends to draw in the ambient, causing a little bit more of a bleed. Yeah. Oops, what am I missing here on this system? Yeah, we don't have an air bleed, do we? Yeah, so this has to have an air bleed too. Well, I'm really out of room. So
I thought that's what
there we go. Oh. There we go. There's air bleed. Just go with it. So we got an air bleed right here that's going to let air come in here. Well, air is now yellow for some reason. There we go. So we got air coming in here. So we got a secondary air bleed. But as the butterfly valve opens some, below that, what happens to this now? So now it becomes a discharge nozzle. So it gets richer and richer and richer as the valve opens, so to speak. But does it really get richer and richer and richer? No, because we just added more air. So we add more air, so it adds more fuel. So hopefully it didn't get richer, but more and more fuel goes in as the air goes in, and so that adds 1, 2, 3 discharge jets because we added 1, 2, 3 times the air until eventually the butterfly valve opens up enough that the primary nozzle takes over, and that's the end of that. You good with that? Okay. Like, yeah, you said this on the video. Huh?
We take a break.
You just had a break. You left. All right, I wasn't gonna do one for 7 minutes, but
7.
yeah.
Should we
Boy.
go 7?
An hour.